All right, so today I'm just going to give you a little bit more material for Module 12, and then I'm going to go over Assignment 12. There are actually two separate challenges that you can choose from for Assignment 12. So I'll go through both of them and kind of explain how they work and what the deal is with both, and then you can sort of choose which one you want, unless, of course, you choose to do both, but that's definitely not required, okay? So we'll get to that in just a minute. But before we get into assignment 12, I want to share with you a really nice, really advantageous module called Pickle. Pickle is used for storing complex data objects in text files. Because what we've learned so far is how to put a string in a plain text file. That's useful. But there's a lot of data that we're working with now, and especially as we move forward, that is way more complex than that, right? Dictionaries, lists, and pretty soon we're going to be actually creating custom objects. Those things can be a lot more difficult to save than just a string. And so Pickle is a module that really makes that a lot easier. So let me just illustrate for you. If we have a dictionary where we have employees, and it looks like this, maybe it's a nested dictionary where we have name, and we have, let's say, email as fields. And we have maybe, let's just say age. That's a good one. Easy to type. And so that's one employee in my record. And if I want to copy that over, I can do another employee. And let's just do one more. Make sure we have 3 in there. So we have 3 employees here. And that's their information. So we have it, let's say we have a program that allows us to manage this data for us. And obviously, if we're managing the data for a company, we don't want to have to re-enter it every time we run the program. That would be totally stupid and really pointless. Anybody who's used any software would just be like, what's the point of having software where you enter all your employees' data every time you use it? That's ridiculous. So clearly we need to save this data. But if I want to save this data as a plain text file, I have to do a lot of work to transform this into something I can save, because I can't just put this in a text file, because all I can put in a text file is string data. So basically, I have to take this and transform it into a string so that I can do that. Let me just show you how that would look. So if I create a list here, I'm going to create a simple list of my data, and it's going to be empty. And then I'm going to say for each key in my dictionary, we are going to append to the data, and we're going to say, we're just going to use an F string. That's the easiest way to do this. So I can say key, and then I've inserted a character here that looks like it could be a lowercase l or a capital I maybe. This is actually neither of those. It's called a pipe. Okay, the pipe character is often used for things like this because it doesn't appear in our regular language. It's not English punctuation. You're not going to write an essay in English class and throw this baby in there. Nobody will know what to do with it because it's not actually English punctuation. So the pipe character is used for this purpose because later on I can split this string using that character, and I don't have any real danger of it appearing in my actual data, if that makes sense. And so then I can say the EMP, and I can say the key and name. So this is how I'm going to insert my fields here: email, and then age. And so what happens here is for each record here, I'm transforming it into a string that looks like this. And so at the end of that, I can say li data. If I print that out and I run that, what I have now is each record is transformed into this. But you can see later on, I can split that into pieces using that pipe character. And I actually don't need the one at the end, right? Because that is extra. So now if I want to take this, it still is not something that I can save directly to a text file. Now I have to turn it into a single string. And the way I do that is I can take this str data and I can use join with this string, right? This is the new line character. If I use this to glue these together, then what it produces is a string with multiple lines in it. So I can store that in a file, and then I can read that file back one line at a time and get that data out. So I'm going to say join li data. And if I print str data instead of actually saving it to a file, there's that data. And now I can read it back one line at a time and then split it into here and put it back into that form. So this is all of the work. And if you have a record, you can imagine if you have a record that's bigger than this all of a sudden becomes a really long thing. If you've got more than just name, email, and age, which obviously you would, in an employee record, you might have 50 or 100 different fields. So this becomes really stupid and hard and prone for error because there's so much typing here. And not only that, but once I save it here to a text file, when I want to retrieve the data, I have to do the opposite, right? I have to split it apart line by line and put it back into this format so that my program can use it. That's a lot of work. And somebody somewhere along the way realized that's a stupid way of saving complex data. It works, but it's kind of way more work than we want to be doing. So enter Pickle. Now Pickle is named Pickle because it's used for preserving data, just like pickling something preserves that food. Pickle allows us to preserve or save complex data very, very simply. So let's say I have that dictionary object or that dictionary with the data in it. If I want to save that to a text file, I can do it in 3 lines of code. And I save it just as it is. And then when I want to open it, I use very similar code to reopen that. So the first thing, import Pickle, because that's an external module. And then I create a file object, just like we've been doing when we read a file or write to a file. But this is slightly different, right? Normally we use RXWA for this flag. Now we're using WB or RB or AB because we're appending or writing in binary. So that tells the file pointer or the file object that we're going to be communicating in a different language. That's basically as if I would say, at the beginning of class, okay, today we're doing class in Spanish instead of English. I'm telling you what language we're going to speak. So I'm opening this not in plain text, but in binary for writing in binary. That's what WB means, not Warner Brothers. So I open the Pickle file, and then the last step to save that data is I use pickle.dump, and I give it the data I want to save, and I give it the file object that I want to put it in. So the data and the container. That's it. And that saves the data. So let's redo this. Instead of this whole exercise, I'm going to go up to the very top here first, and I'm going to import Pickle, just like that. And then down here, I need to create my file object. And I'm going to say open. And I'm going to say my data file.txt. And I just made up that name. That's just what I'm going to use. And I'm going to use it. I'm going to write in binary. Next, I'm just going to say pickle.dump. And I'm going to give it the object that I'm going to save, which is my data here. And I'm going to give it the file object that I want to put it in. Okay. And then the last thing I want to do, of course, is close the file. So I'm going to say myfile.close. That's the whole program of I create the variable here, I open the file, I save it, I close everything. Now I'm done. And if I run this, I have my data file right here that I just created. And if I open it, it looks like this. Uh-oh, it looks like it's corrupted, right? It's actually not. It's written in binary code. So when I open it, I get a lot of weird characters because I can't read binary code back as ASCII text. So this is okay. And that's the biggest, maybe the only downside to using Pickle is that, but you remember before when we were saving our documents, not that one. Okay, so I saved my journal last time, right? The nice thing about that is I can open that text file and I can read it normally without any tools, and I can edit that. And if I save it, my program's data gets updated. I can't do that here. If I change this, I'm going to mess it up. Now I can look at it, and if you look carefully and you know what the data looks like, you will see that that data is actually in there as plain text. The rest of this is just telling what the structure of that data is. So when I close that, now if I want to open that file and read that data, I just want to open it for reading in binary. And I'm going to say pickle.load. And I give it the file name. And I'm going to put the container there. So I'm basically saying I'm going to open this file for reading in binary. I'm going to load the data using Pickle and put it into this dictionary variable. And then I'm going to close that file. And the last step, of course, is to see if it worked. Bless you. So if I run that, now you can see that it's successfully loading that data and the whole structure of that dictionary from that object, and it's working perfectly. And it's super easy. That's a lot easier than the other method that we were using. Okay, so that's Pickle.